Hello guys, and welcome to another Laravel tutorial on our e-commerce project. Today we will talk about requests and request validation because, as I said in another tutorial, we use here in our methods a base request without any validation, but we require the request to have a title or to have a description. And if any one of these things here is missing, our application will crash. Let's take a look at this. If I post this on this create endpoint without a title, our application will crash because title cannot be null. Okay, so how to prevent this? Yeah, it's very easy. Simply cd on the command line, cd into your project and type php artisan make request. And this request should go in the products folder and is named create product request. Fine. Artisan created here in app.http the request folder and the products folder, and there is our create product request. Cool. As first thing, we like to authorize this request because we don't handle authorization here. We will implement this later on in a middleware. This template here extends from the form request, so we need two additional functions. The first one is public function failed validation, and delete the parent car here and leave this empty. We override the basic way how Laravel would handle this. Since it's a form request, Laravel would redirect us back if the validation would fail. Okay, and the other thing is we like to access this request instance in our controller, so we need a function where we return this. Okay, so let's write public function get validation instance. So, and there we would return this get validator instance. Make sure there is no typo here. Okay, good. And now we can implement simply our validation rules. So the first thing we like to require is a title required, and it should be type string. Let's copy this down, and the second parameter we like to validate is the description. Okay, and that's the property of our product here. Okay, good. The title should be unique in products title. That means here in our products table, the title should be unique. We had not implemented a unique constraint on the database, but yeah, anyway, we like to handle it here on the request. Okay, cool. That means if the title is empty, or title is not of type string, or it's not unique on the products table in the title column, it will return an error. And also the description is required. So if it's not in the request body or it's not of type string, we will return an error. Fine. So now we have to use this request, and we will do this in the controller. Simply write here, instead of base request, create product request. And here we could get or could access the validator if we type validator equals request get validation instance. And now we can say if the validator fails, we like to return copy this from below. We like to return an error message, and the error message should be the validator get message back and the first message. And also there is nothing created. We like to say bad request in this case. Okay, what's happening here? We will access the validator from the request. We will check if the validator fails, and if the validator fails, we will return the first error message from the message pack. And also we will return a bad request status, which means HTTP status code 400. Cool, let's test it out. So there is already a product with my title, so I name it my title 60. My title 60 is created now. Okay, I hit enter again to create or to try to create a second product with the same title, and now we should receive an error. The title has already been taken. Cool. I send it without the title. The title is required. Fine. And the same goes for the description. Yeah, it says the title has already been taken because the title is checked before the description is checked. So yeah, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's validate the next request, which would be the update request here. For this, create another request. Let's create the patch product request and just copy the contents from the create product request here. Okay, make sure to import anything you need. And here it's a bit tricky because we don't, or we could do the mistake here to update the product or to patch the product with an ID which does not exist, and this also would lead into a crash. So, and the ID is not here in the body, it's here in the path, so we have to merge it. To do this, write down a public function, prepare for validation, and simply say this merge, and here merge please the ID, and you access the ID from the path with this ID, and now we are able to access the ID here in the rules. Cool. So the ID is required and it must exist in the table products, and we are asking for the ID. Okay, now if I send this request, I expect an error message like the selected ID is invalid, but yeah, the application keeps crashing because I didn't apply the request here. Okay, jump in the controller and apply it. Say patch product request, fine. Copy these lines here below. And we have to do a small cleanup here because there is duplicated code. But step by step, let's first try this out. Yeah, and this selected ID is invalid. Okay, the next problem here is that the title, it must be unique. So here is the unique validation constraint, and that's a problem because maybe the title is okay and we don't change it, but we like to change the description. The request validation here would return an error which says the title has already been used or something. To solve this, we change here. or we add here simply the ID, and this will tell the validator that the title must be unique except the ID of this product, and that's the way to go. So let's say I like to update, let's take a look in the database to get the right ID. So let's say I like to update the ID 3, okay, and it's my first product, okay, and the title is something like my description. So the title has already been taken, yeah, that's right, because ID 2 is using it, my first product 1. Okay, fine. And now our data has been updated. Cool. And if I send this again, it has been updated. And let's put here a second acceleration mark. The data has been updated here. Cool. That's working. So for the other routes, there is the get product. That's how I resolve the get product with an ID to get a specific product. That was the question or your homework in the last video. So that's the way I implemented this here, simply like this: route get product ID, and it calls get product method here. Okay, but also here we could pass into anything, but not an ID which will exist, and then okay, the API would simply respond with a product which is null. But that's not fine. So let's create another request, name this get product request, and inside of this one we like to copy the contents of the patch. Again, make sure you import here anything you need, and we also requires the ID, that the ID exists, and also we require the prepare for validation method. Okay, let's apply this. We could say it's a get product request, and here we copy the lines again, and we are fine. Let's try this out. Get product by ID, and here is an ID which does not exist, and then the error message is the selected ID is invalid. Cool. And if I try it with ID 3, my product will be returned. Nice. That's cool. Okay, on the get all products, we don't have anything to validate because there is nothing we like to validate except the authorization, but we will implement authorization a bit later. And yeah, the same way it works for the delete method. So we could simply create another one, but we also could use, because it has to do the same like the get product request, and we can use it here again. Just implement the 2 lines of code, and if I say here on the delete product with ID delete 1 2 3 4 5, the selected ID is invalid. Cool. And if I say delete 2, then it will return a 200 with an empty array because the product has been deleted. Fine. If I try this again, then yeah, the selected ID is invalid. Fine. Cool. So that's how requests and request validation is working. You may be asking yourself how are these messages here are generated. So the messages here are generated automatically by Laravel. You could override them here if you write down something like here. Let's do this here in the get product. You could write down here public function messages, and we will return an array here, and inside of this array we could say ID exists. We could do something like product not found. Okay, and if I say ID required, then enter product ID. So you can customize your error messages. So let's trigger this one. So we know already ID2 does not exist, and now it will not say the selected ID is invalid, it will say product not found. That's it. Thanks for watching. Hit the like button if you like this video, and also subscribe to the channel. It will help me a lot. See you next time. Bye.